Good morning, Year 6. Sam here, bringing you grammar. I've added 3 exclamation marks at the end of grammar today because I'm super excited. This is a nice little recap session of just some of the things that we've been doing over the past few weeks. So, first of all, we've got our spelling. So what I would like you to do this week is to choose from the Year 5 and 6 spelling words. Some of the words that you find tricky, we've practiced quite a lot of them over the past few weeks. So any that you are still finding tricky to spell, for example, ones with double letters, ones with IE or EI, or kind of any alternative spellings that go against the normal rules. So you can find those spellings on the next slide here. I will attach the slides as normal as well, so you can go back after you've watched this video. You can just choose maybe 8, 9, 10 words that you're going to practice. I'm also going to attach the full spelling menu to Google Classroom because there's more than these 8 activities. So you can choose a few of the activities from that spelling menu, to practice the spellings that you choose. So that's the first thing that I'd like you to do. So you can pause the video here and probably spend 10 or 15 minutes doing those activities from the spelling menu, choosing the ones you like the look of, and practicing some of those key spellings. Okay. And then when you finish that, you can come back here and we will start with our grammar recap. So first thing we're going to do today is recap semicolons. Now remember, there are a number of reasons why we use semicolons. And we're going to kind of just recap those now just to remind us so that hopefully this week in your writing, you can try and use a semicolon. So the first reason that we use semicolons is to separate 2 main clauses. So our main courses, the ones that would be our main course in a meal, the ones that make sense on their own. And we use a semicolon when we want to link, when they're closely linked together, as we want to join them to become one sentence. But both clauses have to be linked together to be able to be joined together to make sense. So, for example, we've got an example here. Riding a bicycle is excellent exercise. I ride mine every day. So I've used a semicolon here to link them together because they can be linked together because the first clause is kind of a statement stating that riding a bicycle is excellent exercise. And then the next clause is me giving you extra information saying that I ride mine every day. So I can use a semicolon to link those together. The second reason that we might use a semicolon is to use one before a conjunctive adverb. So, for example, here we've got the office was closed. That's my main clause. Okay, that's the main part of my sentence, the part of my sentence that makes sense on its own. I want to give some more extra information about that. So then I've added on consequently, which is my conjunctive adverb. I could not pay my bill. So I'll read that all together now. The office was closed. Consequently, I could not pay my bill. So because I have to use a comma after my conjunctive adverb, I've used the semicolon to join them together. Now, a little challenge for you, having a look at these conjunctive adverbs in the box here, which other ones would make sense in the same place rather than consequently? So could I have the office was closed, however, I could not pay my bill? Would that make sense? Does that kind of give a reason? If the office was closed, however, I could not pay my bill. Do you think that makes sense? Could you think of any others that might go in here? So I was thinking maybe as a result, the office was closed. As a result, I could not pay my bill. So giving extra information, kind of the impact that the office is closed has had. Another one that I could use would be therefore. The office was closed. Therefore, I could not pay my bill. Excuse me. So for any of those that would fit in this sentence, I would use a semicolon here before the conjunctive adverb. Another example of when I would use a semicolon is to separate long items in a list if I'm already using commas. So, for example, we've got a list here. So not only am I listing the names of people, but I also want to give you information about who they are. So in a bullet point, it would look like this: John, and then comma, the baker. So I know that John is a baker. Simon, comma, the policeman, and Toby, comma, the architect. If I was writing it in a sentence rather than a bullet pointed list, that's where I would use a semicolon to separate the bullet points almost. So the comma would stay in the same place after the noun to tell me more about that noun. Then I would use a semicolon. So John the baker, he's still one part of my list. Like here, he's one bullet point. John the baker, so I would use a semicolon, because if I used another comma, it would become very confusing for my reader. Simon the policeman, so now I've listed two, John, Simon, and so I've used another semicolon, and Toby the architect. And this slide is one of the main reasons probably that you will use a semicolon in some of your writing. It's also the easiest way, I think, to use a semicolon to kind of show off that you understand how to use a semicolon. So when you're writing this week, you could think about how you could list maybe the characters in your story by kind of saying their name and then a comma, giving a bit of information about them, then a semicolon to separate them from the next person in the list that you're going to talk about. Okay, so now we're just going to do a little bit of a recap on relative clauses. So a relative clause is a type of subordinate clause which adapts, describes, or modifies a noun by using a relative pronoun. So just having a quick think, what is a noun? Pause the video. What is a noun? So a noun is a person, a place, an object, a thing, or an animal. A relative pronoun. Pause the video. What is a relative pronoun? So a relative pronoun would be used to after the noun. So you could have who, which, where, what. So you could have Sam, the noun. Sam, who is at home, is recording her grammar lesson. So Sam is our noun and who is our relative pronoun. So relative clauses are used to create complex sentences, and they avoid using the same pronoun twice in two separate sentences. So Sam is at home. Sam is recording her grammar lesson. So rather than having them as two separate sentences, I could have Sam, who is at home, is recording her grammar lesson. So you get the same information, but it's in one longer complex sentence rather than two. So let's have a little look here, see if we can answer this question. Which sentence contains a relative clause? So the boy who I met at the park is in my class. The team is going to play a match tomorrow. Sue said that she wanted to learn to play the drums, and whenever they have time, they like to go cycling. So these little questions here at the bottom are going to help you answer the question. So when we're looking for a relative clause, we're looking for the noun. So in the first sentence, think about what is the noun and which noun's being modified. So we've got the boy, and then the relative pronoun in that sentence is who. So the boy who I met at the park is in my class. So what would the relative clause be? Excuse me. Have a little think. So the boy is in my class would be the main clause. The relative clause would be who I met at the park, because that is giving me more information about the noun and it's using a relative pronoun here. So the boy is in my class is my main clause, and who I met at the park is my relative clause. Okay, in this question, we are going to underline the relative clauses in each sentence. So I want you to pause the video and have a look and see if you can find the relative clause. So I'll read them out for you just so that you can hear. We visited the fun fair that came to our town. My uncle, who lives in Australia, has sent me a present. My friend, whose rabbit I look after, is on holiday. So let's have a look at the first one together. So we visited the fun fair that came to our town. So what is the noun in that sentence, the first thing? Where did they visit? So fun fair. Now that is the noun that's being modified in the rest of the sentence. So thinking about our relative pronouns, what I will do actually is, because I haven't got one on my slide here, I will attach some examples of relative pronouns onto the Google Classroom assignment, so that if you're stuck here, you can pause it and go and have a look and remind yourself on relative pronouns. So fun fair is the noun that's being modified. So that is the relative pronoun. Okay, that is adding more to the sentence to modify the noun, which is funfair. So the next one, my uncle, who lives in Australia, has sent me a present. So think about any nouns that you can see and any relative pronouns. So that's going to help you find the relative clause. So my uncle, that is my noun that I'm going to modify and give you extra information in. My uncle, who, that is my relative pronoun, who lives in Australia, has sent me a present. Okay, what punctuation is this sentence missing? Have a little think. So hopefully you've thought the punctuation. So my uncle, I'm going to put a comma here, who lives in Australia, comma, has sent me a present. Okay, so that's my relative clause. This is also my embedded clause because this time it's embedded in the sentence. So it's my source. Okay, it goes in the middle of my main course. Whereas this one, we visited the fun fair that came to our town. The relative clause we said was that came to our town here. So that doesn't need a comma. And is that a starter or a dessert? It's a dessert because it comes at the end of the main clause. Okay, my friend whose rabbit I looked after is on holiday. So what is the noun that's being modified here? So it is friend, because this here, let me try that again. So friend is my noun, and then this is my relative pronoun. So my friend whose rabbit I look after is on holiday. So what is the main clause there? And then what is the relative clause that I'm adding in to give more information about my friend? Have a think, what punctuation am I missing as well? So my friend, comma, my friend, comma, whose rabbit I look after, comma, is on holiday. So my main clause there is my friend is on holiday. Then I've added in my relative clause. Is it an embedded clause? It is indeed, because it's gone in the middle of my sentence as my source. Okay, now we're going to play a little game of true or false. So, true or false? A relative clause always has to include a relative pronoun. So pause the video here, you can go back to other parts of the video, or you can go to look at the slideshow to look at what we've already kind of looked at. If you're not sure, but think about, do you think it's true or false, and why do you think it's true or false? So it is true. A relative clause always has to include a relative pronoun, and here are the examples of relative pronouns. And we've also got, so we've got the relative pronouns down here, and then we've got when you would use them. Okay, true or false? A relative clause needs to go in the middle of a main clause. So true or false? A relative clause needs to go in the middle of a main clause. I'm going to go back to this page that we just looked at, where we looked at all the different relative clauses, see whether that helps you to answer the question. So this is false. A relative clause needs to go in the middle of a sentence. It doesn't have to go in the middle of a sentence. It can go at the end of a sentence as a dessert. So I have been, I'm missing a word there. I have been to the mountain where the witch lives. Okay, so here I've got mountain, that is the noun that I'm modifying, and where is my relative pronoun, and so my relative clause, where the witch lives, has come at the end of the sentence. A prize was given to the author who wrote the play. So here we've got our main clause, a prize was given to the author. That's our main clause, the part that makes sense on its own. This is the noun that I'm modifying, and who is the relative pronoun. So who wrote the play is my relative clause. So in both of these examples, the relative clauses come at the end. Okay, true or false? A relative clause is a subordinate clause. Pause the video, have a little think. What do you think? This is true. A relative clause is a subordinate clause because a relative clause never makes sense on its own. It's always source or desert. So it's always embedded in the main clause or at the end of a main clause. Because it always starts with a relative pronoun, it wouldn't make sense on its own. True or false, a relative clause is an embedded clause. Now, I've kind of just given this away on my last slide with what I was saying. So have a little think about what I said. You could even rewind 20 seconds to listen to me again. Is this true or is this false? This one was a little bit of a trick because this one is sometimes. A relative clause is an embedded clause, but it's not always an embedded clause. So sometimes it's embedded, so it's the source in the middle of my main course, and sometimes it's at the end, so it's the dessert. So when it's in the middle of a main clause and it's been dropped in, it's been embedded in, then it's an embedded clause, but it's not always. It doesn't have to be a relative clause. A relative clause can come at the end. Okay, I hope this recap was super helpful. Remember when you're doing your writing activity this week to really have a go at using some complex sentences. So all of these types of sentences with relative clauses to give me extra information about your noun and to modify the noun. When you are doing your writing, you can even come back to this assignment, to this slideshow or to the video to remind yourself of those complex sentences and really challenge yourself to use them as much as you can in your writing. See you soon. Bye.